Welcome to the Battle of Ohio podcast, where we follow the revival of the historic rivalry between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns.
So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the Odell Beckham Jr. topic that I wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah, here we go.
One of my favorite YouTubers, Brett Kollman, he does the film room where he breaks down film. He talks about like a major topic that's going on in the NFL right now, and he does a really, really good in-depth analysis of how he feels about it. And he was bringing up the Odell Beckham Jr. criticisms that have been coming up lately. Something I did not know, by the way, because I don't really watch like sports TV or anything like that. Like I don't watch Stephen A. Smith. I don't watch First Take or Skip Bayless or any of that stuff. I have no clue any of this stuff's going on. Like pretty much anything I said about Odell Beckham Jr. was something I organically came up with like on my own because I noticed a trend and I didn't like it. It had nothing to do with what people were saying on TV, if anybody was saying anything on TV about it. But he was basically criticizing people doubting Odell Beckham Jr.'s potential with the Browns going forward, particularly focusing on like my criticism, which apparently other people have had the same thought process about his sketchy on-field relationship with Baker Mayfield. His main argument seemed to be that 2020 was a weird season, and as a result, it took longer for Baker to get on the same page with all of his receivers, not just Odell Beckham Jr. So the fact that you saw Baker Mayfield go off and start doing way better in the second half of the season, it was just a coincidence that OBJ wasn't part of that. It just happened to be that's when Baker Mayfield started doing better anyway. And I get that. I know numbers and statistics aren't the end-all be-all of a discussion, and correlation does not equal causation. In fact, I also recognize I could be completely wrong about Odell Beckham Jr.'s potential in Cleveland because, at the end of the day, he is an ultra-talented athlete who has had massive success at the position before. Who's to say it couldn't come back? But I do want to clarify that my point that I don't feel that was actually addressed in this video by Brett was that I don't feel Odell Beckham Jr. ever had good chemistry with Baker Mayfield. Going all the way back to when he first came to Cleveland in 2019. You didn't have all this weird, you had Freddie Kitchens. That was another set of weirdness or whatever. But you didn't have all this COVID weirdness. You didn't have Baker Mayfield, taking a minute to come into his form like he did in the 2020 season. He kind of had a sophomore slump, but point being that I feel they've had plenty of time to get down a rhythm, and it seems like to me they never developed it. On a previous episode of this podcast, I went back and looked at every single pass Baker Mayfield has ever thrown to Odell Beckham Jr., and I compared it to his overall numbers. And the indisputable fact of the matter is, when throwing to Odell Beckham Jr., Baker Mayfield's completion percentage plummets and his interception rate skyrockets. And you can talk about, XYZ thing, but at the end of the day, that is an indisputable number that definitely happened. And we have to talk about that being a real thing, because I know that you can talk about, there's this excuse, that excuse, the other excuse. And Odell Beckham Jr. is fantastic and Baker Mayfield are fantastic. And I'm not arguing with any of that. I'm just saying, looking at the numbers, it looks like Baker Mayfield just is less comfortable when Odell Beckham Jr. is on the field. That's just a indisputable fact.
We have such a small sample size of it, though. We have a season, obviously, but we have a season with Freddie Kitchens. The problem, okay, here's my biggest thing. And here's my biggest thing. And this is what we talked about. Odell Beckham is trying. I think the New York Giants, I should say New Jersey Giants, because that's the yard, the New Jersey Giants. New York Giants. I think that they taught Odell Beckham how to play wide receiver wrong. Because I think the key factor to Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield's relationship is one Kevin Stefanski. I think that's a key factor. That's my confidence and why I think this is going to work. Because I think Kevin Stefanski is going to figure out a way to make something work. And I think Kevin Stefanski is I want to point it this way. You ever have that one thing that we just love, that we're just nerdy about, that we're so nerdy about, and we're so confident that we had one opportunity to deal with that thing, then we will make it perfect. I love to write. Like, you give me the right actors in the right movie, I know exactly how I'm going to use some of the actors for the movie that I have in my head that I want to make. I know exactly how I want to do it. Or look how certain directors use Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Like, oh no. Look, like, this is how you act it, but wait till I get you. Wait till I put you in my movie. Look what the Russo brothers did with Iron Man. Like, wait, hold on, we got some ideas for you. Play in our system. Let's show you this way, and we think this way is tailored more towards your style. I think the same thing for Kevin Stefanski. I think Kevin Stefanski went on multiple reports and said that he had a fascination with Odell Beckham in his game. Kevin Stefanski is the reason why Odell Beckham probably still in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski love Odell Beckham. Kevin Stefanski have a very large fascination with Odell Beckham. I just think that Kevin Stefanski has a plan to how to make these two correlate with each other. And also, I don't think that the sample size was large enough for us to judge Odell Beckham versus Baker Mayfield. I know that's crazy to say because they played a whole season together. They played a whole season and a half together. But I think that last season, the first half of last season was wasn't indicative of what the Browns were going to be. What we're seeing is an ascending team, a team that's constantly growing and constantly improving and constantly changing. And in the first half of the season, you had a new head coach, you had a new system. Basically, the whole thing from last year, or new general manager for that, basically last year, the whole plan of action last year was to clean up the messes from 2 years ago. That's what we were doing last year. We were ahead of schedule last year. So it was to clean up all the messes from 2019. That was the goal of 2020. And they did it during the pandemic. Well, all those factors, they really hit the ground running in the second half of the season. And Baker Mayfield really hit the ground running in the second half of the season as he started to learn and get used to the system. Now we're in year 2 of the system. Now people have a better understanding of the system. And also, I just feel like there's so many factors that contribute to the fact that Odell Beckham is going to go freaking off this season. Because not only all of that, you also have the fact that Odell Beckham had to watch his team from the sidelines during playoffs. And I think that's a big impact. And that's not that, how do you measure this, the mental aspect of the game? How do you measure desire? How do you measure that stuff? You can't. So when Odell Beckham says that he felt the hunger of wanting to play in those games, people are like, man, we heard that before. But you know what I mean? Like, when you're an athlete, you're a competitor, and you realize that this is the best situation that you've ever been in your career, and this is the best team that you have ever played on in your career, this is the best head coach that you ever had in your career, and this is the best quarterback you ever had in your career, this is the best receiver you ever had in your career, this is the best running back in your career, and this is probably one of the best, this is probably as good as it's going to get for you. This is your best opportunity for you to ascend. And even if you don't do it for the winning part, if you win on this team and you shine on this team, your superstardom is going to ascend to a level that you've never seen before. It is in his best interest to find some way to make this work. So I will argue that the desire is there more than ever. I'm very confident in this. I'm extremely confident in this. I agree that this team, that the Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham thing is one of the reason why I think Baker Mayfield is going to have such a great season this year, because I think Odell Beckham is going to give Baker Mayfield a receiver that he have never had before. I think it's going to be interesting.
Okay,
I think it's real fascinating.
but at what point does the fact that it's just hasn't been working, at what point does that become a problem? Because I mean, perhaps the desire is there. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps, this is the best situation they've ever been in together, and that's going to make a big difference. But like, why haven't they shown anything really? I mean, there's been some stuff here and there, but why hasn't there been a real? Why has Baker Mayfield looked worse with Odell Beckham on the field and throwing to Odell Beckham? Why has he just simply looked worse in those situations? At what point does this become a problem? And at what point do you stop blaming Freddie Kitchens and stop blaming COVID and start maybe considering blaming Odell Beckham Jr.? And maybe even potentially blaming Baker Mayfield. I don't know. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield's done anything necessarily wrong here. I just think Odell Beckham Jr.'s personality doesn't necessarily fit with the system that the Browns are trying to put together. The Browns are trying to come out of that like prima donna, swag it up kind of like, mentality. And instead they're trying to like turn into adults. And it's Odell Beckham Jr.'s never been that in his career.
I don't want to say we just gotta wait and see on this one. This is what I'm saying, that we just gotta wait and see. I give it 1 week. I give it week one.
Give it okay. I agree that we can wait and see, but at some point we need to see it.
I say we don't know by week 8 that we won't be probably, if he's not, we know by week 8 if it's not going to work out. But I think by week 1 we're going to know it works out.
Okay then. Personally, if I was in charge of the Browns, I would have already traded Odell Beckham Jr. Although in fairness, I've never been that high on Odell Beckham Jr. in the first place. I probably wouldn't. No, well, I'm not trying to hate. It's probably coming off as hate, in fairness, but it's.
No,
I've just never been a big fan of his personality. It just never really seemed to fit. It's kind of like I was talking about with Allen Iverson and Dan Marino. It's just like it doesn't seem to really fit with a really good team structure. It seems like he's kind of a me first kind of guy, not a team first kind of guy, and that's what you really need to have success. So, I mean, personally, I wouldn't have even really given up as much as the Browns gave up to get him in the first place. I think the Browns could have used some of those, assets or those resources that they gave up to get Odell to actually, make having him on the team work. But, I mean, you can certainly make the argument that he and Baker just need some extra time to gel. And with all of their talent, they could be primed to go off in 2021. I get that. But I don't know. I feel like at some point we got to see it. Either way, I just wanted to clarify that. And, just because I don't believe Odell Beckham Jr. has been a good acquisition for the Browns, and I don't see him becoming a great acquisition for the Browns out of nowhere in 2021, that doesn't mean I don't recognize the fact that there's been adversity that could be holding their connection back. That doesn't mean I don't recognize that there's been, problem after problem after problem that has been cultivating maybe a less than ideal situation. But at the end of the day, the NFL is not an ideal place. Overcoming adversity is part of the job description. That's why I love Joe Burrow so much. That's a big part of why I think the Bengals drafted him number 1 overall, because overcoming adversity is part of what he does best. And I just don't feel Odell Beckham Jr. is very good at overcoming adversity. He hasn't really done it very well in his career. And every time it pops up, he gets in the news as, being kind of like this drag or this problem. And I'm not saying he necessarily is, but that has been generally the trend that his career has gone. So, we know OBJ can be a prima donna. So if you want to prove that it was just simply foul circumstances and not a toxic relationship that has led to the struggle so far, quite frankly, they're running out of time.
Okay. All right. No, I mean, I like, look, honestly, like, I am so, Carl, I am so confident about this one. I am really confident about this one. I'm dying on this hill. This is a hill I'm going to die on. I'm choosing this hill to die on.
I mean, in fairness, if Odell Beckham Jr. was on the Bengals, I'd probably be dying on that hill too. But instead, I'm taking the logical approach here.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, so we need to go ahead and move on to the state of the AFC North. But real quick, I got to go to the bathroom because this is a fairly long episode so far. As far as the rest of the AFC North goes, first of all, let's go ahead and get the real fun stuff out of the way first. So we've been hearing a lot of stuff about how bad the Bengals offensive line has been the Bengals offensive line has been in training camp so far, right? Yet I haven't heard a single good thing about the Steelers offensive line at all. Not a single thing. I've been hearing a lot of bad, and it didn't look so good. Najee Harris made it look a little bit better than it really was, but it still didn't look so good against the Cowboys. Now, granted, preseason week 1, don't read too much into that, but point being, it's just been a windfall of bad coming from the Steelers offensive line room. It started with Trey Turner. Don't forget this Trey Turner, former Pro Bowler with the Panthers, went over to Los Angeles to play with the Chargers, had a terrible, awful season, like rated somewhere in the 30s per PFF. And then the Steelers picked him up. A lot of Bengals fans were like, "Oh, we should go pick up Trey Turner." And then I was saying that at first, and then I looked at the numbers, and I'm like, maybe not that guy. Maybe not. And then the Steelers picked him up, and I was like, okay, you know what? That's fine because this guy doesn't look like he's any good. Well, before training camp started, Trey Turner's like, I feel like I'm really feeling like myself again. That whole trope that everybody says, like when they had a bad season the year before and then they're like, I'll just chalk it all up to me not feeling like myself. I feel like myself now and everything's going to be great. Well, it's been really bad. According to every Steelers source I can find so far, it's not been looking good for Trey Turner. He has been looking just as bad as he looked with the Chargers, and the Steelers are really counting on this guy to shore up some of that interior offensive line play. And in addition to that, the guy who's expecting to be the other starting offensive guard at left guard, Kevin Dotson, who was the starter last year and was actually one of their better performing offensive linemen last year. One of the guys who you think, okay, well, if you're a Steelers fan, you're thinking, okay, well, at least we got Kevin Dotson. Hopefully that we can build a good line around him. According to Mike Tomlin, he hasn't even done anything to earn first team reps this year. So, go ahead.
It's great. No, it's great. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I can't stop smiling because I think it's great. But you go.
It's hilarious, but
it's like they're trying to just force Ben Roethlisberger retirement.
It's like they're trying to
give you the worst possible offensive line while you're the absolute slowest in your career. You wasn't even that fast to begin with, but. Right. We might see how durable you really are. This is going to be a feast for every other team in the NFL. I can't wait for Miles Garrett to retire, make a Roethlisberger retire.
Him or Mason Rudolph. and that symbol hit was actually with a helmet. That'd be funny. So anyway, former Bears offensive guard Rashad Coward, which, by the way, fantastic name for a Steelers player, Coward. Former Bears offensive guard Rashad Coward has been taking the first team reps in the place of Kevin Dotson. And, we talked about this on the State of the AFC North previously. Rashad Coward recorded a 46.2 overall blocking grade in Chicago last year. So this Steelers interior offensive line is an absolute fucking mess. It
doesn't scare you at all. You're not scared of the offensive line.
I'm starting to think that the Bengals are going to be able to get pressure against the Steelers this year.
I'm pretty confident they can. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. I'm pretty confident my 3-year-old cousin could get pressure on.
I think the Bengals 2020 lineup could get pressure on the Steelers this year.
I think Ben Roethlisberger, if he played defensive line, could get pressure on Philly.
He might be able to do that anyway. He's a big boy.
I think AI without practice can get pressure on that.
On the whole, it seems like my belief that the Steelers are not going to or are going to be bad this year, partially due to my prediction that the offensive line is going to be abysmal, has not been a super popular one. There's some people out there saying stuff like that, but it seems like a lot of people are like, oh, no, it's the Steelers. They'll figure it out, blah, 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 blah. And just, completely putting on the blinders to what's going on in Pittsburgh right now. But like I said, I haven't seen a single positive thing said about this offensive line so far in the preseason and training camp and whatever. So I'm not sure how they're expecting that there's going to be a quality product out there on the field with, by the way, an ancient quarterback who you just said is not, the same, he's a lot slower than he used to be. He's not the same player he used to be. And a rookie running back. In fairness, Najee Harris, I felt looked very talented. Like he had a lot of talent. He had a lot to bring when we saw him play against the Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game last Friday. He only averaged 3.1 yards per carry and didn't get into the end zone, but 18 of his 22 yards came after first contact. So it's what's obviously going on here is the Steelers just didn't give him a chance, and he made a chance. He got almost all of his yards after first contact. So it's like, he was shaking dudes off. He was making plays happen despite the fact that the offensive line seemed to want him dead.
Najee Harris is going to be a beast.
I think Najee Harris is going to be
really
good if he can survive that Steelers offensive line.
Just about to say that.
Right.
Because I think that he's going to be good, but I don't think that he I don't think he's coming into a good situation. So it's funny because the Steelers, you think, the Steelers.
Now,
you think Pittsburgh, all people should have a good situation for him, but they don't.
I will say, to push back a little bit on the Najee Harris's amazing narrative, in fairness, Jalen Samuels and Kollman Balaj, who are the 4th and 6th string running backs, 6th string. How often do you hear about a 6th string running back? But the 4th and 6th string running backs in Pittsburgh both looked better. Their numbers in general were better than what Najee Harris had. The Cowboys are an absolute goddamn mess of a franchise right now. So the fact that Najee Harris looked good against the Cowboys, it's like in week 1 of the preseason is like, how much can you really read into that? That remains to be seen.
The Cowboys haven't been able to stop the run in 10 years.
Do what?
I said the Cowboys haven't been able to stop the run in 10 years.
Right. I will say, as run blockers, the Steelers' offensive line did generally perform pretty well, especially Joe Haeg, who is not a starting guy. He was probably blocking for like Jalen Samuels and Kollman Balaj. I don't quite remember, but he got a 91.5 run blocking grade from Pro Football Focus. So it's not like the Steelers' offensive line did an absolute like god-awful horrible job at run blocking. But at the very least, we showed, Najee Harris showed that he can keep up in the NFL. The problem is a talented running back isn't going to mask the insane number of holes that the Steelers have on an offensive line this year, which we saw that last year because, that Steelers running game did not function last year. And that's part of why they collapsed at the end of the year.
Yep. Agreed.
And it's just like you can't, everybody likes to talk about the Bengals offensive line, and in fairness, the Bengals offensive line has a lot of problems. But it seems like nobody's really talking about the Steelers offensive line. Not any of the national media people. Anyway, I've seen a lot of fans talking about it. But the Steelers offensive line is a problem. And if you don't believe that the Steelers are if the Steelers try to trot out this offensive line functioning the way it is, and you believe that they're going to win more than 5 games, then I don't know what the hell is going through your head, but this, they just are not going to be able to get anything accomplished on offense with the offensive line looking like this.
I think, I honestly think that the Steelers get a pass because they're the Steelers.
No, yeah, for sure.
And I think that they're just, people are just ignoring the obvious fact that the Steelers are going to struggle next year.
Right.
And look, even at the beginning, you were the Steelers going to suck bandwagon before I was. For the whole time, I was like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think that the Steelers are still going to be good. Like, I don't know. The Steelers always find ways to be good. And I just kept on saying that, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, how can this team be that good?
They're gonna have to dominate on defense.
What about this team scares you?
I mean, the pass rush.
Yeah, I'm about to say that defense. Like, Minka Fitzpatrick's really good.
Minka Fitzpatrick's really good, but they lost a lot of talent in the secondary. So it's like really the only thing about the Steelers that scare me right now is the pass rush. And we talked about it. They got TJ Watt. They brought in Melvin Ingram. They got I forget his name, but they got that rotational defensive end who did really well, kind of on the second half of last year. And he's coming in. I can probably bring up a depth chart right now. Alex Highsmith, that's who it is. I didn't even see it now I got the thing brought up. But yeah, it's Alex Highsmith. They got, Cameron Hayward still there. They got Tyson Alualu, who's been doing pretty good for them. They've definitely got, and they drafted Quincy Roche, who I could definitely see making an impact for them. So that Steelers pass rush is, definitely going to be something. It's definitely not going to be something that I think that you can just completely forget about.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to pay attention to the Steelers pass rush, but the secondary, the problem is you can avoid a pass rush being a problem if you can just get the ball out quickly. And if the secondary is lacking a lot of talent, which they have some talent, they got Minka Fitzpatrick, they got Joe Hayden, who is good. He just, hasn't really been consistent with showing it lately, but he is good. Antoine Brooks Jr. is a pretty good, nickelback, but, and they got, Terrell Edmonds is a pretty good, complimentary safety to Minka Fitzpatrick. But I mean, for the most part, I'm just not really buying the Steelers secondary this year. They lost Mike Hilton, they lost Steven Nelson. And, they still got Minka Fitzpatrick, but that's kind of, it. As far as guys that you can just count on to definitely be great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the fact of the matter is if the pass rush doesn't get to the quarterback, immediately, I don't know how the Steelers team is going to get anything accomplished because if you can just throw right over their heads, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. And then, shutting down their offense is just having, somewhat of a pass rush yourself. Getting past this offensive line, which we just talked about, does not have a lot that really, inspires any confidence whatsoever. You haven't heard anything about either of their two draft picks, Dan Moore and Kendrick Green. You haven't heard anything about them impressing particularly well. You've got Trey Turner, who's expected to be a plug-and-play starter, who's been playing just as bad as he did last year. Kevin Dotson, who was supposed to be a shining example of, what they did already have on their team. He hasn't been playing well. So it's just what are the Steelers going to even be able to accomplish? It's it's hard to win a game when you can't play in all aspects of the game. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have the ability to extend plays that he used to have.
Hey, you remember when the Steelers were 11-0?
Barely.
And then they lost to
Right.
Man, what the funniest thing is you on this podcast the Steelers are the worst 11-0. I remember you saying this. I remember you verbatim. I can't remember what week it was. but they were the worst ever record in old team in NFL history. This actually happened, and here's why. You were like a 20-minute rent, and I was like, all right, and like maybe because like I'm just like I hate the Steelers, but I just watched them just beat us down so much that I was just gun shy, just talking smack about them. Like, well, they beat me, they beat my team, but like I can't really talk smack about the team that owned my team for the last 30 years. But at the same time, suck it, Pittsburgh.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and lie that the Steelers haven't owned the Bengals for the most part for however goddamn long.
The reason why I'm talking smack is because
at the same time, if I see some shit, I'm gonna say some shit. And it's like I'm gonna come off as talking smack because I hate the Steelers, and I'm not gonna lie about that. And I'm being very blunt and very forward, but that's also just kind of who I am as a person. I'm very blunt and very forward about most things. And the fact of the matter is there is a problem with the Steelers right now, and nobody's really talking about it to the extent that I feel people need to be talking about it. This is a big problem, and I just don't see how they're going to get another one of those classic Mike Tomlin winning seasons out of this unit. How are they going to do that? I don't understand. Mason Rudolph's not going to get it done. Ben Roethlisberger's definitely not going to get it done. I don't even think he's going to make it through the season.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, let's just be real. They're not gonna be good this year. No, I'll get into it. Like, they're not gonna be good this year. It's gonna be so much fun to watch, and it's gonna be karma because they didn't do. The thing is, they've been the NFL sweetheart for so long, and now
because they won 4 championships in the 70s. That's why.
Yeah, so they're not gonna be good this year. They're not gonna be good at all this year. And the thing that gets me is how arrogant they're going about the rebuild.
Right.
Like they're very arrogant about their rebuild. Like, all right, so be arrogant about your rebuild. Don't listen to anybody else, right? So you do that. Now you're in a situation where you're we haven't improved your defense. You haven't improved your offensive line. Yes, you got a running back. Congratulations. Don't got a quarterback. Receivers are looking worse. Like, what have y'all done this year to improve besides the running back position? And it kind of shows you got to improve because you went into last season on a decline, not an incline. Yeah, the whole Pittsburgh.
So, speaking of poorly performing offensive linemen who have played for the Steelers before, apparently Alejandro Villanueva has been struggling in Ravens training camp. So, I mean, I think that's kind of like, it's kind of a bit of a duh. But at the same time, it's like, he was kind of like one of the more notable free agents out there for a reason. I already went on my rant when we were talking about Joe Burrow about putting too much stock in training camp performances. So you probably shouldn't react to Villanueva's training camp performance either. But at the same time, there's a little bit of concern there because, like, the Ravens picked him up because they traded away Orlando Brown Jr. That was supposed to be like the offset because, like, he was by far and away the Steelers' best offensive lineman in 2020. And which is funny because, we were already talking about the state of the Steelers' offensive line, and they just the one guy who actually instilled any confidence in you ended up going to the Ravens, which is hilarious. But he's definitely not instilling any confidence in the Ravens right now because he's not looking very good in camp for the Ravens. So that doesn't particularly bode well for them either. I'm not quite as worried about the Ravens because they do have a lot of other good players on their offensive line. They got Ronnie Stanley. They brought in my boy Kevin Zeitler, which makes me sad, but Kevin Zeitler's really going to, help with that running game. So
yeah,
the fact that Alejandro Villanueva isn't doing great isn't the end of the world for them because they have an otherwise very good offensive line. but they're definitely going to notice it without with having lost Orlando Brown Jr.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they got it. I see. Like the thing is that I want to believe the Ravens are gonna. I want to believe the Ravens are going to do what the Steelers are going to do this year, but I don't. I think the Ravens are going to be good this year, and that pains me to say. And I
don't
know
know
I think
if the Ravens are going to be.
I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to be good.
Yeah,
they're going to be good. That's what when I say that I mean good. I'm not saying there are tiers to this in football. With 7 teams that make the playoffs, I think the Ravens are going to be good. Now, I think the Browns are going to be better. I think the Browns have taken a step forward beyond the Ravens, but I think the Ravens are going to be a team that you do not take a nap on game day for sure. I think the Ravens are going to be a team that's going to still be a threatening team every single time you play them because of the coaching, the pedigree, and all that stuff. And they still have a solid defense. You still have Sammy Watkins. He's a baller, man. And he's probably the best receiver that Lamar ever had. And I think Lamar is going to try to throw the ball this year. He's going to try to throw the ball this year. But I don't think that the Ravens are going to be more than a 10-win team this year. And that's with the added game. I don't think they're going. I think they're going to be a French playoff team. And I honestly, I think the Bengals are going. Maybe.
Why don't you finish that thought, Thomas?
You know what? F it. No. Yeah, you know what? No. I really believe in this Bengals team this year. I honestly think the Bengals are going to be better than Ravens this year. I can't believe I'm making that statement. But I think the Bengals are going to be better. And here's why. The Bengals offense. Okay, let me say this. The Bengals have a better offense than the Ravens. Bengals offense, to me, even with that offensive line that we're not sure about, I think it's going to come together. I think it's going to be at least below average, just below average at worst to average. I think our Bengals offensive line is going to be fine.
Well, in particular, if we're talking about head-to-head matchups here, in particular, the Bengals have put a lot of emphasis on being able to stop the run this offseason.
That's what I'm saying. I think the Bengals. No, yeah, I'm just gonna say. I think thinking about it because y'all did upgrade that quarterback room. We already talked about how we feel about Jesse Bates. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say it, man. I think the Bengals are gonna be better than the Ravens next year. I said it. I said it.
I think the Ravens are going to be. I agree with you saying that the Ravens are going to be good this year. I think that's about the extent of it. I don't know if I think they're going to win 10 games. Maybe with the extra game thrown in there, they could potentially win.
I just like the Bengals offense better. I just look at, okay, I'm looking at this like this. I see what thrills me more about an offense. I think that we've seen the best from Lamar Jackson. We were talking about this. We went so much depth in this, so we're not going to go on more depth. I think that when you have, that Joe Burrow, Drew Samples is his name. The tight end. I don't know why I'm blanking on tight end's name.
Sample.
Tight end's name. Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sample, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. That combination scares me more than Lamar Jackson, Ingram, Wilkins, or Brown. That combination for what the Bengals are trotting out scares me a lot more. Oh, yeah, Andrews. I mean, the only thing that they got on y'all, literally the only thing that the Baltimore Ravens have on the Bengals offense that is better than them. And I would argue that y'all don't have a bad tight end at all because he's going to take a step forward. Look how good he was in the rookie season.
Well, but Mark Andrews is a pretty damn good tight end.
Yeah, he's one of the best in the league. He's one of the best in the league. And, so that's where they got you beat. But other than that, y'all offense is better. So like y'all offenses, y'all beat them in everything. Like, I take Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson. I take Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd over their receiving room. I would.
On paper,
I think Joe Mixon over.
Because the problem here is the Ravens do have a pretty good pass rush, and the defense.
That's my problem. I think the defense.
I
think the defense is slightly better. I think the defense is better.
Well, I think the Bengals defense may have made some significant improvements, but the thing is, part of the reason the Ravens dominated us so badly last year was because that defensive line really disrupted what we were trying to do on offense, which in fairness, everybody did. But you see, that's the thing. It's like, do we have better receivers than the Ravens? Yeah, I think we have better receivers than the Ravens. Do I think we have the better quarterback? Yeah, I think we have the better quarterback. Do we have better, running back as far as like Joe Mixon versus Mark Ingram? Yeah, I think we have the better running back. But at the same time, do all of those pieces fit together better than the way they fit together, than the Ravens pieces fit together? I'm not sure. We have a better team on paper, but I feel we had a better team on paper last year too. At least at offense versus offense. And it just didn't work like that because that offensive line was so damn bad that, the Ravens had a pretty good pass rush, and it didn't really matter the fact that we had all this talent. It's like none of it could really come together because the offensive line was so damn bad. This year, I think the offensive line's improved and probably maybe on par with the Ravens, but it's all on paper. We have to see it actually play out before we start saying things like I think the Ravens are a good team in 2021. I don't think they're going to be great. I think the Bengals have the potential to be good in 2021, and I think they have the potential to do better than teams like the Ravens. I don't know if it's going to happen though, because right now it's all on paper, and we got to see them actually put the whole product on the field all at once. And I mean, there's been a lot of on paper, in theory, the Bengals could have been successful through a lot of all this stuff, and they just never did it. That's really defined the Zach Taylor era, is a lot of potential just never comes together because the team just doesn't gel together. Something goes wrong and we just can't figure out why things aren't working. Now, granted, we probably haven't had this level of young talent that we've had before, and this is really truly Zach Taylor's team right now. So it seems like we're not going to have problems with veterans who are like Marvin's guys who don't respond to Zach Taylor the same way. There's a lot of stuff that on paper this team should be much better. But I'm not willing to say that we're going to be better than the Ravens until we see them actually start to perform and gel and mesh as a team.
Yeah. Let's see. Just like I said before, it's one of those things that we just gotta wait and see. I'm hesitant saying it right now because I'm not fully all in on it yet. But I don't know, I'm just looking at this. I've been very kind to Bengals fans on this podcast, but I don't know what it is, man. I just feel like the Ravens showed us everything that they could be. And I think it's going to be real soon. It's kind of like we've been referencing the NBA all across this podcast. It's kind of like Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum or an NBA team. There's NBA teams that are really good, but are never going to win a championship. So Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, two great players, very good players. Combination don't work though, because they can't play defense. You got two undersized guards in the backcourt who won't play defense. And yeah, they're flashy, they're cool. They made it all up to the NBA or to the Western Conference Championship during the bubble, but they're not going to win a championship. Very similar to the Ravens. I don't think the Ravens are going to win a championship with that team, man. I think that I think it's going to be very soon where they're going to look at that team, they're going to go all right, we're good, But no matter how hard we try, no matter what pieces we add, we got to restart. We got to tear this thing down and do something different. Because I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's definitely happening.
I don't know if they're going to completely
not this year. Yeah, not this year, but probably, it might be one of those situations.
I think what I'm saying is I don't know if they're going to completely rebuild until at least the end of Lamar Jackson's career. They're probably going to keep trying to do something similar for a while. But my thing is, and it has been and it always will be, I do not believe in Greg Roman. I never have. I liked his ideas at first when he started coming into the NFL and putting like a lot of this impressive stuff down. But the fact of the matter is, once the NFL figures out Greg Roman, then it looks bad. And I could see the Ravens going the same way the 49ers went at one point. They're they were like competing for the Super Bowl when Colin Kaepernick was there. And then at one point they just started doing badly. And, the 49ers, like Colin Kaepernick wasn't doing great, but the 49ers as a whole weren't doing great around him. And then, all that kind of stuff happened. They ended up being one of the worst teams in the NFL before they just kind of like magically made it back to the Super Bowl again, only to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. But I could totally see the Ravens going into a hole like that. Like going into I don't think it's going to happen this year. I'm not necessarily predicting that's even going to happen. But I could totally see something like that happening because if they keep trying to ride this Greg Roman train, the same thing that happened to the 49ers is going to happen to the Ravens. The NFL is going to figure them out, and they're not going to be able to get anything accomplished.
Man, I don't know, man. I don't know. Something about this team just bothers me.
Yeah. For sure.
Something about that team just bothers me. I don't know. I think they're going to be good, though. I still think they're going to be good. I still think they're going to be a good team. I just don't think that they're going to be. I think the Browns are going to be better. But I'm not saying they got a better defense than the Bengals. I think the Bengals that they had to beat on defense. Yeah. But I just think that offensive wise, I think the Bengals are better on offense than the Ravens are.
I think the Bengals are set up better on offense than the Ravens are, but again, you have to see them actually.
I think the Ravens are going to have a nice first half of the season. I think in the first half of the season, this statement is going to look crazy. But I think by December, in December, we're going to start to see what I'm talking about.
I can get behind that. Like I said, the more people get used to the Ravens, the worse the Ravens tend to do.
Yeah.
But, I guess we'll ultimately see. We've been going for about 2 hours now. So
we said it was going to be a long episode.
Do what?
We knew it was going to be a long episode.
We did know it was going to be a long episode. And so most likely we are going to end up splitting this into 2 episodes. So, that'll all be cool and all. Don't expect 2 episodes every week until the season starts because, that's just not how we're really doing things. Although season's about to start, I don't know. I don't think we really need to do 2 episodes a week during the preseason, because the preseason games don't really need that much of a breakdown, and we can probably get it all out in a weekly episode. But preseason's only 3 weeks long, so before too long, we're going to be getting back to doing 2 episodes a week plus the
thank God for a short preseason. Thank God for a short preseason.
Oh yeah,
my God.
Only 3 weeks. But yeah, like I said, before too long, you're going to be seeing kind of more like really, we're going to be recording 2 episodes a week, but we're also kind of more or less going to be releasing 4 episodes a week because, like we had last year, we have those predictions episodes, which kind of end up turning into they're so lengthy. We go into so much depth that they kind of turn into their own episodes, even though we record them during the right after the main podcast. So you'll be seeing a lot more content on this channel here pretty soon once the season starts up, but probably after the preseason, because honestly, I don't feel the preseason games. I don't know about you. I don't really feel like trying to predict the score of the preseason game. It's all kind of meaningless, and nobody really takes it seriously anyway.
Oh, I don't think. Come on, man.
And
I'm not. You're gonna be alone.
Two regular episodes a week to break down the preseason action either. So
I'm not starting the preseason.
Yep. But once the season starts, though, we will be bringing you guys a lot more content. So look forward to that. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Battle of Ohio podcast. Once again, thank you so much for listening, everybody. You can find more of what I do at Kyle Phelps 92 on Twitter and Facebook.com/thephelps. And like I said, don't forget to go to atbnetwork.com and check out my written articles that I'm doing again. Like I said, I'll link my first article in the description of this video, and basically just about how I feel Joe Burrow deserves more trust than everybody's been giving him over this whole knee issue. I think that's really important. But you can find Thomas at T_star94 on Twitter and Instagram. It's the same name. It's a lot more useful. And he's got a YouTube page called Blowdown Page.
Actually, I just rebranded.
Releasing some music on there too. It's all good stuff.
I just rebranded my page, by the way. We rebranded it. It's now called the Thomas J Network.
The Thomas J Network. Okay, well, I did not see that. So
yep, I just rebranded it.
It is the So you're saying if I go to YouTube right now, I will not see Blowdown Page?
Nope, you'll see the Thomas J Network. We have rebranded the whole account because it started gaining popularity, and we wanted to rebrand for a while now, and we thought that we should do it sooner than later because it's starting to gain momentum. So we decided to rebrand it. It's now called the Thomas J Network. You like thinking.
No, I'm trying to. I don't see that on my subscriptions.
Let me just send it to you.
Nope. I also don't see Blowdown Page on my subscriptions though. So
yeah, because I changed it to Thomas J Network.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying I don't say Thomas J Network.
It's just say Thomas J Network. It's not the. There's no the in front of it. It's just Thomas J Network.
Yeah. I am subscribed to it, so I guess that's the thing. I didn't see it on my subscriptions, but now I see it. So okay, so yeah, everybody go to Thomas J Network on YouTube to find more of what Thomas does outside of this podcast. And if you want to come on an episode, we will do our best to have you on. I got to be honest, the last 2 episodes that we recorded, we were supposed to have somebody on, and it just kind of didn't happen. So, we're not perfect, but we do like having people on. Now, I will say this episode, we had so much content that it's probably best that, we didn't have a guest on anyway, but hopefully we'll be able to get him on for the next episode. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. If you got any thoughts about anything we talked about today, comment down below. Hit us up. Just, let us know if you have thoughts about, what we said, or thoughts about anything that you want to see on the podcast, or any questions that you have. I'd love to add a listener question segment at some point. Like once we start getting people interacting and stuff like that, I think it'd be really cool to add a listener question segment. So, like I said, if you guys have just anything you want to come on, you want to, just have us shout you out on the podcast, whatever, just, hit us up, let us know. But anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. I will leave y'all with a hoo day.
Go Browns.